It's Good Friday. The spring officially started over a week ago, and it's snowing and it's freezing cold. Somehow the weather is just not playing ball with us yet again. Welcome to Self-Sufficient in Suburbia for March. This is a box of eggs. Nothing unusual in that. Not eggs that we have produced ourselves. These are fertilised eggs, and we've just bought a dozen of them. They are from a breed called cream leghorns, and they lay a sort of bluish greenish coloured egg. Now, fertilised eggs, as they are, which means that we're going to have a go at raising some hens ourselves. And for Christmas I got an incubator, and today for the first time we're going to try it out. This is the incubator, just a mini one, and it's set to the temperature for hen's eggs. As you can see on there, we've marked one side of the egg with a cross because we need to turn these over every, I think it's 3 times a day, so we'll know with the cross on that we've actually turned them over. Now this one takes, well, it's meant to take 10 hen's eggs, but these are some of these are quite small, so hopefully it will take the full dozen. And these were laid within the last 7 days, so the incubation period is 21 days, so hopefully within about 2.5 weeks we'll have some chicks hatching from here. Now in the middle is this section here, which contains a little bit of water, and that is just to make sure that there's some humidity in the air. And that is this one here is the final egg. So, yep, room for a dozen, and I'm just going to get the top and put that on, being ever so careful. That's it. And most of the crosses have managed to stay on top. So what we'll do is we'll keep an eye on this for the next 2 weeks, and hopefully in a couple of weeks' time we'll have some chicks. We've been given some rhubarb roots by a friend, and here is one of them. So I'm just planting them on the allotment. Now the thing is that once they're planted, that's it, they're done. They will grow and look after themselves largely. However, you do actually lose that little bit of ground permanently to the rhubarb, so we're going to have to select a bit of ground which we don't worry too much about not being able to use for any other crops. We're in the greenhouse, and the greenhouse at the minute is proving extremely useful for us because of the poor temperatures outside. Now in January I planted up a lot of the onion sets that we couldn't plant out in the autumn last year because it was too wet. So as you can see, they're actually doing rather well here in the greenhouse, but ideally really want these planted out into the allotment. But we can't do that at the moment because it's too cold. It's modestly sunny now. It isn't freezing outside at the moment. It does get a frost on the ground, so we're not going to risk putting all that out, planting all that out, and then seeing it all destroyed by the frost the next day. We planted out some cabbages in the autumn, and interestingly they managed to survive all the wet weather over November and December, and they were growing reasonably well across the winter period. And then the hens got to them and they rather stripped the leaves bare, so that we were left only with these skeletons. So I've rescued them from the vegetable bed, put them temporarily into these seed trays and put them here in the greenhouse. Again, they are doing well. They're coming along okay. There's a little bit of new growth on them, but again, we'd really want these to be planted out into the allotment, and these are actually going to go up to my dad's allotment in the next village up the road. But we can't get them out at the moment because again it's too cold, too frosty, and we just got to wait for a bit of warm weather to come through. And also on the here in the greenhouse we have the garlic planted. These have just been planted today. Again, it should have really gone into the allotment, as with these onions next to it as well. And we've got a number of trays of onions that we've planted up in here in the greenhouse rather than out on the allotment at the moment. Again, we're just waiting for that warm weather if we're going to get it, if we're going to get any. We're waiting for it to arrive. What we've also got in the greenhouse here are the potatoes. These have been chitting for about 3 or 4 weeks. We're not too worried about them being behind schedule at the moment, although we may miss planting the early crops. But what we haven't been able to do is get out onto the beds and rotivate them and get the manure into them as well, ready for potato planting, so that might delay things as well. Well, we've been beekeepers now for 2 years. Last year was quite a disaster for beekeeping generally, but today we are here at our second North of England bee convention. There's lots of trade associations here with their displays, and we're also going to lectures and talks about beekeeping as well. And one of the things that we're trying to do is work out what to do with our hives to make sure that they don't swarm as much as they did last year.
If they want to talk, you don't do no.
Last year, 2012, was the wettest on record here in England, and it just seemed to rain and rain and rain. And as a result, our allotment was waterlogged for much of the year, and we lost a lot of crops as a result, or in some of the crops that did manage to grow, we didn't get much from them. So this year, one of the big jobs to do is to dig a set of drainage channels across our main allotment to make sure that we're not going to get caught out by wet weather conditions. So my job this morning is to start digging that channel, and as you will see very soon, the clay layer underneath the soil is very heavy and thick, and that's one of the reasons why our allotment was so wet. You can see quite easily, or the hens to get out of the way of course, that that's the thick clay layer underneath the soil here. All this yellow is the clay, courtesy of past ice ages, and given the temperatures that we've been getting over the last week or so here in the first week of spring, it feels like we're going back into an ice age. This is the drainage channel now dug to the edge of the allotment, and in that corner there we'll dig a further extension to the channel so that the water, the drainage water, flows out into the culvert that's over there. This is where the culvert flows out, and just up the bank here to the corner here is the drainage channel we've dug across the allotment. The original plan with the drainage was to dig the channels, fill them with gravel that we would buy from the local DIY centre, and then cap them over with some paving stones and create some paths across the allotment as well. Well, we decided that that was an unnecessary cost because buying the gravel was going to be rather expensive. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these pipes here, which have lots of notches cut into them, and they will go into the bottom of the drainage channels, and then we will cover those over with lots of rubble and stone and bricks that we're going to gather across the whole of the allotment site, and then we'll pave those over with paving stones. But as I say, that is a job for next month. This is the rhubarb that we planted at the start of March, and as you can see, it is, despite the weather, actually starting to grow. And what we've done is we've fenced off this little bit of ground as a rhubarb patch, and down at the bottom we've got some horseradish growing as well, but this is fenced off to keep the hens off. The hens won't eat the leaves, they may peck at the stalks, but it's really to stop them from walking all over this and damaging it, and frankly it's also to stop us from walking on it and damaging it as well. But as you can see, the rhubarb is starting to come through. 3 weeks ago today, here in our spare room in the house, we set up our incubator, and for the last 2.5 weeks I came in 3 times a day to turn the eggs, and we topped up the water in the little container in the middle of the incubator to make sure that there was the right humidity in the incubator. And then partway through this week I stopped turning the eggs, because that's what you're meant to do 2 or 3 days before they're due to hatch. Now we expected them to hatch sometime midweek, and I kept my eye on them and nothing happened. And by last night, which is nearly 3 weeks after we got the eggs, and it's a 3-week incubation period for hens' eggs, by last night I'd more or less given up on them ever hatching, and I came in here for one last look in the hope that I might see some of them hatching, and there was no sign of any activity. And then I heard a little chirping sound coming from one of the eggs. This is the scene that greeted us this morning. One of the chicks has hatched, and there are 1 or 2 other eggs in there, including the one that's right next to the chick there, which is just starting to hatch as well. Now we can't take the cover off the incubator, so well, certainly not for a day or so. And that little chick there is looking a bit exhausted after hatching out, but I think he or she is about to have one or two little brothers and sisters as well. You can see there that it looks like another little chick is starting to peck its way through the shell. As you can see, most of the eggs have now hatched. We've had 8 hatch so far. There were 12 eggs in there to start with. One got broken and we had to throw that out. Another one got damaged and we know it was not going to hatch. And another 2 haven't hatched, which may hatch over the next day or so, but I'm a bit doubtful about it. However, as you can see, they're lovely little chicks. And we are now going to put these into the brooder, because these chicks have hatched and have been in here for a day, and they need that time in there to recover from the hatching and to dry out and build up their strength. And they've got sufficient nutrients and energy from the eggs to be able to survive for a day or so in what would naturally be the nest. But now is the time for them to go into the brooder. This is our brooder. It's an old fish tank that's sat in our garage for years. Haven't used it since my last goldfish died about 12 years ago. That yellow contraption is the brooder itself. That's the heater, the chick heater, and I'll just show you around the edge there. The chicks will keep warm underneath there, and what we've done in the corners is use some cardboard to fill in the corners and actually get away from that 90-degree bend there. And that stops them all huddling in the corner and any little chick being crushed in the corner. On the floor is an old tea towel, and underneath that is some newspaper. See, that is a cream leghorn, just about a day old. What we've done is we've added water in a container there, and this is some of the chick feed, and we'll get that for about 3 weeks, or maybe a bit longer. We've seen different instructions on how long it's meant to get that. As you can see here, this one was the one that was broken, so that feels very lightweight. I don't think there's anything in there. The other 2, we'll give them a day, so we'll have the incubator back on, but that one I'm pretty certain there's nothing in there, so we'll remove that. So there we go, our first little hatchery. This is the allotment at the end of March. Now it's sunny, but don't get carried away because it's sunny, but it is still rather cold. This cold snap is continuing, and it looks likely to continue for some time into April as well. Now, as you can see, the allotment is just about ready for having the beds dug over and the crops planted. But last year we learnt the hard way that we are too dependent on this allotment on the weather, which is one of the reasons why we're putting in all the drainage. However, on this allotment we also keep our ducks and our hens, and ducks and hens don't mix too well with vegetable crops. So the plan is that we're going to focus the main allotment here on our growing of soft fruit, and my dad's smaller allotment, that's where we're going to focus on growing our vegetables. Now, Dad's allotment needs a lot of work doing on it to get it fully back into use. Here on the main allotment we're ready to make a start on that, to make a start on getting the crops in. However, we're not going to deal exclusively with soft fruit on our main allotment. We are going to grow some vegetables here as well, and we're going to build some cages to keep the ducks and the hens off the vegetables that we will be putting in. But they're all jobs for next month, for April, so hopefully you'll join us then to see how we get on.